I was with my son, and I saw them, and they were laughing on the bench, and I was like, I think they're playing that game that I made. And I was like, come on, Miles, let's go see. And he's like, no, you can go. I'll hold the dogs. That's kind of creepy. And I go behind. I was like, yo, I made that game. And they were like, okay.
Yo, what's good? What's poppin'? What it is, what it ain't, what it could be, what it should be, what it would be. It's yours truly, Mr. Cam Newton the Sum, Mr. Boogie to all. For another episode of Funky Friday, and I'm here to deliver great content for the masses and real funky stuff for your asses. Now listen, today we are in for a treat because this is a business partner of mine, a business associate, a person that I admire, have grown to do some research on and empowered by his story. And if you like the underdog story, if you like the glow up story, this is the poster child of that modern day real life. A person who started on one thing and ended doing something completely different. I present to some and introduce to others the founder and CEO of Overtime, Dan Porter.
How you doing? Thank you.
My man, how are you?
I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm ready.
So he was like, off camera, he was like, man, don't you hit me with those, don't hit me with no questions about XYZ, this, that, and third about the music, and it's real more of the, what'd you say, Wu-Tang, Big Daddy Kane, all that.
You know, I watch your shows. I'm like, oh, those guys, they know a lot about that. I don't know anything about that.
But listen, I think this is a special episode for me because what I want my consumer or my viewer to be able to understand is, you know, here you are, a person who, and I'll let you tell it, like, how did you come about creating where we are right now in Atlanta, Georgia, OTE? How did this come about?
We're sitting on the show court, which is where we play all of our basketball games for Overtime Elite, which is a brand new sports league that we've started. Players are 17, 19, some are in high school, some are out of high school. We pay them, they play for the world. They're some of the best players in the world, and people watch them. It's like a whole new next generation sports league. And right here is the show court, meaning that while we have games here, we don't have teams that come from different cities. We play for the internet and we play for the crowd, so it's 1,200 seats. But it's really for people watching on the internet or all over the world. And they play and they compete, and you watch them at a high level. And 2 years later, you might be watching them in the NBA All-Star game. And so it's a unique place where they come, they train, they learn, we educate them, they play, we film, we tell stories about them. It's called Overtime Elite. It's a brand new sports league that we started out of Overtime. And we're just trying to provide people a different path to achieve their dreams. You know, and a lot of these young guys, they want to achieve their dreams, and they want to chase them right now. They want to know, can they go pro? They're not interested in the other choices out there, and some people are, and that's good for them. But for these guys here, Kevin Ollie, who won a national championship at UConn, he's our head coach. We have all kinds of incredible people around them. And I'll tell you a story, you know, we call it high school basketball. And so some of my friends come and they say, oh, I'm coming to see Dan's like high school basketball thing. And they think they're coming to watch my kids playing in like a gym. And they're like, oh, it's cool, and they come here and it's like a temple of basketball. Yeah. It's like the ceiling only exists in the Barclays Center. Like the Jumbotron is gigantic. And then the players come out and they're like 7 feet tall and they're really good at basketball. And they're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be when you said high school basketball. And I'm like, it's just a unique next generation product built for these young people and honestly built for the internet.
Yeah, I love it. And it's a sight for sore eyes, man, because this is the Mecca. This is the Mount Rushmore of the creme de la creme, the creme de la creme? Yeah, creme de la creme. Of just being able to show the world my talent, right? And I think to your point, you know, a lot of people have and still will say like, man, you changing these kids' lives and da 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 da. But when you know you're good at something, why get distracted doing other things?
Yeah.
You know, there's a person who I also heard say, I didn't have no plan B, no plan C, because it distracted me from plan A.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, when I was growing up, man, I had this vivid story of me and my brother. My father was a contractor, a landscaper, and you know, when people tease me for my size, I've always been big, but I never lifted weights. I would be picking up sod, wheelbarrow, you know, from one place to another. And I remember having a conversation with my brother. He was like, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I was like, "Oh, bro, I want to be a football player." He was like, "Bro, man, you sound stupid. You know how hard it is to be a football player?" And then this was the era where it's like, "Bro, you know, like Michael Vick, like, you know how hard it is to be that? You know how hard it is to be Randall Cunningham, like Dante Culpepper?" I'm like, "Bruh, I'm going to be a football player." And, you know, we had that love that only brothers and siblings can have. Like, I'm crying in the truck. And my dad, as you met, he's like, "Boy, what you crying about?" And I'm over here like, man. And I was just I believed in that vision so much that when I was in college, I knew, you know, they say you're a student athlete, but you're an athlete student. Yeah. And I say that respectfully because you won't be at that college without your athletic prowess. Let's be honest. Like, can we keep it funky? You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? So now what you've created is something where you are allowing somebody who knows exactly what they want, and you're giving them every stream of access that they will need to take this Prius. That's a good looking Prius. It may be a 7-foot Prius, but we're going to transform it into a Ferrari.
Yeah, and they're going to chase their dream. And in fact, even one of the players, their grandfather said to me, you know, I just kind of want them to go to college and become investment bankers. And I said, you know, the average age of a college student in the United States is 26 years old. They could go play in the NBA for 5, 6, 7 years. Then they could go do that. Like, we assume that everything has to happen in a specific order. But the fact is, you know, we had Madeleine Albright, who was like a Secretary of State. She didn't get her PhD till she was 55. Like, people do things at all speeds and at all times.
Oh my goodness.
And right now, this is what these guys want to do to chase their dream. And if it's different, then people, you know, I asked like Carmelo Anthony, I was like, why are people hating on what we're doing? You know, the people who are. And he's like, Dan, it's just different. People don't like change.
But how dare you to challenge, you know, your status quo to say, man, I'm giving an opportunity to people who think outside the box.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because we all live in a world where it's so many of our beliefs, thoughts, and decisions are pigeonholed to fit one type of person, right? Like politics, religion.
School. 45 minutes, the bell rings.
Right.
Then you go to another class. Like, they say, like, I could take somebody from the 1850s and I could show them Fortnite or Snapchat or Times Square, and they would have no idea what they're looking at. I could put them in a classroom with a chalkboard, and they could be like, this is school.
Oh.
So it's like the rest of the world has changed and evolved in so many different ways, and yet school still looks exactly the way it does. The way you chase your dreams in sports kind of still looks exactly the way it does.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the reason why we should try some different stuff.
Awesome.
So I've done a lot of things. As I think I told you, I worked in education for almost 8 years. I started as a high school teacher. I worked in the internet. I started companies. I sold companies. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I was working for Endeavor, WME, which is the largest talent agency. And at that time, we had all these famous people on the internet, and they were like, it's about actors, but now it's about YouTubers, and it's about Instagram stars. And so I was their head of digital, and I basically was like, we're going to make, these folks are talent, now we call them creators, and we're going to build a business servicing them as if they're The Rock or if they're LeBron or anyone else like that. As I built that business, I started to also get involved in sports, and I kept hearing, you know, this was 6 or 7 years ago, this thing like, this next generation, they're not watching sports in the same way that people were before. Less than half the people in this country have cable TV. So if you grew up watching ESPN, you don't have cable TV, you're not watching ESPN. We got phones, we can watch highlights on the phones. Not only that, like what choice did I have? I could watch sports on TV. Now you got video games, you got TikTok, you got Snapchat, you got Instagram, you got a lot of other things. And if you're running a big sports league or a team, you're very focused on your audience. And there isn't a single sport in the US where the average age of the audience is under 40 years old, average. And so you're just thinking, okay, I'm crushing it now, but what happens in 10 years?
Yeah.
Like what happens when this whole venue is empty and nobody cares because they didn't participate? And so I just was thinking about that, and I was thinking it's so crazy that like all of these creators who I'm talking to over here and representing, they're so big on the internet. And like every young person in America is like, wait, you work with so-and-so? You know so-and-so? And over here, they're like, yeah, sports is cool. I saw some clips on Instagram, but like, I'm good. And by the way, we're at the lowest participation rate in youth sports than we've ever been in the history of this country.
Explain
Meaning
that.
less kids are playing sports. There's some sports that become rich kids sports and they're too expensive, or it's just, people aren't finding ways to participate in the ways that they used to. COVID has made it even worse, right? And so I'm just like, wow, there's so much juice and energy over here on the internet side. And on the sports side, for me and my generation, tons of juice and energy. I'll play fantasy football, I have a big screen TV. But like, it's not like young people didn't care, just smaller numbers. And I was like, how do we like take all the energy that's over here and apply it over here? And I think like every generation wants their own thing, right? You grow up in the 70s and you're just like rock and roll, and then all of a sudden punk music comes. And your dad's like rock and roll, and you're like, not rock and roll, punk music, It's like R&B, hip hop music, like, and we were talking about old hip hop music. Now it's like, oh, I don't listen to that. I don't listen to this.
1, 2, 3 into the funk.
Exactly.
Like,
and they're like, that's corny.
It's like Gucci flip flops, and we know how that goes. But I think where we are right now is a very peculiar situation in the growth of the youth. Right, you're talking to a person who I bear no expense, and I tell everybody I have 7 children, and I literally just left, a trip on the West Coast in LA where I was able to multitask. The 2 oldest they're on spring break now, so traveling for my reasons, for personal reasons and business reasons, is one for them. But then on their side, it's just like, oh my God, we get to go to LA, like let's go shopping. Oh my goodness, so. It was very, just to see their growth. And like I said, I have a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old, and their lives are completely different than what I was like when I was 15 and 16. But as a parent, and especially a parent in my position, I don't force them to, hey son, go out there and play basketball. I got all this access, whatever you need, I'm gonna do it. Hey daughter, like, Shakira, go do this and go do that, and I think that's just where we are as a society, as a nation, because we are taught that everybody has their rights. And now with bills being passed where, from the identity to, what do you deem is important, and to that point, I think explain to the people who sees this about OTE, like what is that?
Yeah, so as we said, like every generation wants their own thing. So I was like, every generation wants their own story about sports. And that's where it started. So Overtime came out, we told a different story. We told it for all the social media platforms. It felt more relevant. I wasn't telling it, I wasn't writing the captions, but I knew how to find young people to do that. And as we started to tell the story, and we started to figure out how to build a really big audience, because people are like, I don't mess with sports. Oh, but I love that. That's funny. And that's kind of in my own language. At the same time, you have all this stuff happening outside of you, right? You have like athletes saying that they want to be paid. People saying like, maybe I don't want to go to college. Maybe that's not the best way for me to make it as a pro. Or I don't like the rules and regulations, or any of the other things like that. And we started to think, wow, we have like 75 million followers over the last 5 years and all these people paying attention to what we're doing. And then all these kids and parents are saying like, there's only one path. There's only one way to go to the NBA. And you guys have all this like content power and energy. Can you find a different way? And so we started to think about like, what if there was a different way to go to NBA? What if you could get paid? What if you could turn pro when you were younger and focus on your sport? What if you could do so in a way where you were in front of everybody on top of their screen? And when we started and announced it, people got upset. They were like, well, now you're taking these kids away from college and everything else like that. And I've always said, like, the only thing that's wrong is if there's only one way to do things. Like, there's not a one-size-fits-all world. So if you want to go to college and play and maybe go pro or maybe never go pro, that's dope. If you want to go to Australia and you want to do that, that's cool for you. If you want to go to the G League, if you don't want to go at all, you want to train, we're just trying to provide another choice for people who are like, I want to become a pro athlete, I want a different way to go there, and I want a way that fits me. And that's the most American thing of all, is choice.
It's a real American story. The American dream is that in itself. I want to take you back real quick, and you spoke to it, but I think you sped up when you said you were a high school instructor, a teacher,
Yes.
right? And here you are, the brains, the mad scientist, you know what I'm saying, to the degree that has created something that was completely outside the box. We're talking about this being created in, what, 3 years?
We started this September, and we've been working on it 2 years before this.
So to think 5 years ago, heaven forbid, a decade ago, this was even unheard of. As a matter of fact, when we were in talks, and we'll get to OT7 later on, but when they sent me the address, I was like, Atlantic Station? I said to myself, man, what in the hell they damn built a facility in Atlantic Station? Me being from Atlanta, I never even, thought about, this even being a possibility. And then when I first walked in, I was like, damn, like where the hell have I been under a rock? And you see this beautiful cathedral, almost like, for basketball players to be able to have such a healthy, safe, no excuse environment, like whatever you need, all the access, at your fingertips to be successful. And, as you was coming up, I think, when we were talking a couple weeks ago, you were saying you didn't want to sell your clips, or people weren't trying to use your clips. Only thing you were worried about was a watermark, right?
Yeah.
So, for the young entrepreneur that sees this, for the person who's like, I believe in something. And I even got offered a quick story. I'm heavily involved in 707, right? People tag me left and right. And I seen this picture of me, and I was like, yo, I'm trying to send it to my production team. And I was like, man, can we use that, or can you send me the file for that specific picture? Yeah, I'm thinking like, oh my God, it's Cam Newton. Like, bruh, anything you need, just send me an email and I can send the file over. Man, this dude hit me back with that's gonna run you $375 for the clip. I said, man, get out of here, bro. But certain people don't understand, they don't get it.
Yeah.
And you were able to understand and think about what's more important, a quick dollar or the understanding of, this is an opportunity that I can see. Every time a person sees this clip, they see the clip, but they also, what the hell is this O at the bottom? You know what I'm saying? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think if you are trying to build a bigger business, we started using iPhones to film because I felt like the iPhone and the mobile phone was like the new white truck out there with the like thing like that.
Right.
I felt like we could be anywhere. And it was about speed. Yeah, pre-TikTok.
Yeah.
And so we're filming all these clips. It's like Zion Williamson and LaMelo Ball and all these incredible players who are in the NBA. And all of a sudden, the ESPNs of the world, all the sports things, they're like, I don't know how this little company has these clips, but let's get the clips.
Right.
And as you said, they were like, you can license them, meaning they'll pay us for the clips. And right then and there, that could have been a business, right?
Right.
I could have been like, $2,000 for that clip and $3,000 for that clip. But to me, like, I didn't want to be giving the clips to other people. I wanted to be the ESPN. And so I was like, you can have the clips for free. You just got to leave that little overtime watermark and you got to write @overtime on it. And they were like, free? Like, that's all I have to do? That's cool.
Yeah.
And they just blasted them out. And that's how people found out about us.
Wow.
And they used to say, Dan, you're killing it. Overtime is so big. I see you guys everywhere. I was like, well, you don't see us on our channel.
Right.
You see us on other people's channel. But you see that enough times and you start to think, what is that overtime? You kind of like type it in and you're like, oh, that's where all those clips are coming from.
Right.
And so in that way, you're playing the long game. And I think it happens a lot in sports. A team will have an Instagram account and they'll be like, let's put all the sponsors on the account and make some money, which I get it, that's their business. But then the content isn't as fun and you don't build the audience around it. And so you're constantly in this balance, like, should I make $1 today or should I invest in something to make $2 tomorrow? And it's impossible to know. So you just have to trust your instinct. And if I made $2 today, can I make $4 tomorrow? You know, because I didn't take that money that was right in front of me.
Right. I think I'm at a very, very peculiar situation in my life, and I'm asking for advisory help. And I'm gonna ask you, at what point in your life did you decide, commit to betting it all on yourself, betting it all on your idea? You know what I'm saying? So taking everything that you went to college for, everything that you went to school for, everything that you thought you believed in, and you said, no, like, this is, as you quoted and said, it's a lot of white space over here. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I want to do that.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of things. I worked for some big companies. It's just not me. Like, some people are really good at it. They're good at politics. They're good at operating in a big company environment. I was bad at it. And so I was kind of like, if I can't work there, I better find some way to work for myself.
Right.
And I think part of it too was, you know, I was a musician and I played jazz and I played the guitar. And, you know, you can play other people's songs, you can play classical music. But when I like to play music, like, I would improvise and, you know, just play what came into my head. And it really kind of built up in me as a young person this idea that, like, you can make something in the world that's original and it feels amazing. And it's like the greatest drug of all time. Like, I made that, I did that. Even if it's tiny, even if it's like your parents are taping it to the refrigerator and you're like, that's mine though, I made that. Like, I didn't color in something else like that.
Sketch it.
And so I think for me, the idea that I had these ideas and I just wanted to see them happen in the world. And so you take that, you kind of take the stuff that you don't know works, and then you add in like 2 gallons of like confidence / with a little bit of arrogance, and you mix it up, and you're just like, I have this thing, and I have to make it happen, and I think I see something that other people don't see. And that's the hardest thing. I teach an entrepreneurship class at NYU, and you
Still to date.
Today, yeah.
Wow.
And so you say a couple things, like the way to have a really good idea is to have a lot of ideas. It's nobody ever goes in the lab and they're like, I have an amazing idea, and that turns into the thing. You just have a lot, and you realize those ideas stink, but whatever, I'm on to the ones that work. And the other thing is nobody, the students are like, oh, I have an idea for a company. I'm like, oh, where'd you come up with that idea? I was just sitting around and it just came into my head. And it's usually not like that. Somebody has an experience where they're like, I wish this existed in the world, or I was driving my parents to this thing and I realized, like,
it didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you train yourself to be aware of those things and you start to see where those opportunities are, I think the last thing we say, like, you don't have to be an expert in the company, you have to be an expert in the problem you're trying to solve. And so coming back to overtime, I didn't know what overtime was going to be. I just knew what the problem was because I kept hearing it from all the sports media executives. And I was like, Dan, you have to become an expert in the problem. And then you can figure out how to come up with a lot of ideas. And we tried so many different things. The overtime, if you know who we are now, like, you see all the things that worked, but you don't see all the things that didn't work.
Yeah. So to that point, I'm going to ask the question that I asked, that I gave you kind of the tip on, like the trailer for, right? What's more important, belief or presentation? I have my understanding, but I'm curious to know, what's yours?
I think that, the easy answer is both. But if you can't express your ideas in a way that other people can understand them, you can never get them out. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who had this kind of business idea, and he was very technical, and he was a software developer, and he was explaining it to me. I just couldn't understand what he was talking about, and he was so in his own head. And finally, I said back to him 2 sentences. I said, "Are you saying it's kind of like this and this?" And he's like, "That's exactly what I'm saying. Can I just put what you said in my PowerPoint?" And in that sense, if you can't, if you assume that communication is a subset of presentation, it's not just pretty visuals, but it's telling the story, it doesn't matter how much belief in the world you have, because it's not only can you not get anyone to invest, you can't get anyone to work with you. You can't get any customers because you're so passionate about this thing and they don't know what you believe in. But at the same time, I mean, you probably watch these shows on Netflix, he conned this guy, the Tindler Swindler. That's
Swindler.
all presentation, right?
Yeah.
And his only belief is a corrupt belief.
Puppet master,
Yeah.
all those.
And so one can't work without the other, but when you have one without the other, you get a bad product. You either get all presentation and you're basically swindling people, or you get so much belief, but it's you can't talk and get it out. So they have to work together. I feel like it's easier to learn presentation than it is to learn belief. So I'm gonna stick with belief.
So to that point, I'm gonna say belief too, right? And I've heard once, and I know this person is gonna be tickled that I mentioned it, but it's even when it was told to me, I played to my strengths and I partner in my weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
So to that, with this, it's my belief in myself will let me know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Presentation is one thing, but I think belief is so important because true story, I had a business venture where I put no money in. I just had stock options and, equity stake just off of name and likeness. And I can swear to you, and that's not even a word that I use, this was probably, at that point in time, one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. Technical. He was showing me things where I showed him, an Aura ring, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I pitched that to Apple a couple years ago." And I'm like, well, and then he had presentations and documents of, what it's like and what the income is going to gross and, what he'll need and everything. But it was almost like every time, and I'm not standing up and saying, "Hey, I'm Dan Porter," and I'm not saying that, but you can't make people listen while you're whispering, and it's that was my issue. It's we're having this conversation, and I'm like, bro, this is a dope ass idea.
Yeah.
Why the fuck is it not? I'm part of my English, but why isn't it not keeping you up at night?
Yeah.
And even if it is or isn't, you should tell the people who you know that's going to have a big impact on your growth.
Yeah.
You have to make them believe.
Yeah.
I come from the field of you have to be a leader of men, and it's not in most cases about presentation. But let me clear this up by saying it runs parallel, and I'm just trying to disassociate this proton atom, right, and say you have to decide what's more important. But in that field that I'm referring to is football. And as a quarterback, when you walk into a locker room, it's not more or less about how you present the play. It's about, hey, listen here, motherfuckers. Hey, this is what we got going on right here. Hey, come on, bro. Come on, Jake. Come on, dog. Hey, Pat, come on. Hey, listen, I need unbelievable focus right now. That exuberance of, it's just, okay, I don't know what the play is. I don't care what the play is. I believe in you enough to know that I can go execute my play.
Right. Belief is contagious. Presentation is not contagious.
It is not. And I look at, when you're talking about documentaries, a person, special shout out to Miss Melanie, your wife, and it kind of sparked this whole idea when I'm talking about this whole situation. And she says her affiliation with, creating documentaries. I love documentaries, short films, docuseries, and things like that. The best documentary I've seen here of late was Genius.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't tell you that belief is everything, what will? And that's one example of many, but I know somebody will listen to this and hear this and see this and be like, well, I could give you an idea about presentation. Look at Jeff Bezos. You know what I'm saying? Look at this, look at that person, look at that person. And I'm sitting up here to say, like, here I am. I've made my whole life off of the belief, not only in people, right? OT7, right? But the belief in myself,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not the smartest. Hell, the lion isn't the fastest. The lion isn't even the strongest.
Right.
But the belief that when he roars, everybody in the damn jungle, from the antelope to the gorillas to the chimpanzees to the koala bears to zebras, you kind of get where I'm going.
Yeah.
When the lion roar, it's a little different. You know what I'm saying?
When you're an entrepreneur, though, there's two types of belief. Like, first of all, belief, like I said, like, it gets you up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Presentation doesn't get you up in the morning. And you just have to believe, like, why is this going to be successful? Because I actually believe it's going to be successful, and I'm going to will it into existence and make it successful. But I've dealt with two different types of people in my career, whether I'm investing or advising them or whether I'm working with them. The first person says, I believe in this, like, this has to exist in the world. And because I believe in it, I'm going to make it happen. And they go and they put their head down, and they're just like, they're not even a running back, they're a fullback. And they just go like that.
A wedge buster.
Yeah. And the second says the same exact thing, but they're like, just because I believe, it's not enough. Like, I'm going to go out there, and somebody's going to say, like, that's actually, like, that part of your idea doesn't really work. And you're going to be like, okay, well, I can still believe, but tell me what works.
Yeah.
And if you use belief to make you so hard-headed that you can't take in all the signals from the outside world, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
If you use belief and you believe that all the feedback you're going to get and the signals are you're not insecure about your belief and you can take that feedback, then you're just like, you're going to find a lane. You're going to find that open lane eventually. And I think people confuse the first one with the second one. And then they've been working on something for 6 years and they're like, I don't know why it's not successful. All I had to do was believe.
Right.
And you're like, that's not actually all you had to do. You had to keep moving and keep iterating and not be insecure about that belief.
And evolving. I think that's key. I think what initially it started out, it probably, the vision never changes.
Yeah.
The road
100%.
may change.
Exactly.
You know, how many times have we told, hey Siri, tell me how to get to the nearest so-and-so, so-and-so. Okay, take a right approaching at the next stoplight. Not this light, and then you make the wrong turn and it's like rerouting. And then, even though it's gonna say, it may kick you back 7 minutes or it may give you, there's an accident reported ahead. You're still on the fastest route. That's life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But you can't control what's around you. So like in my career, one of the things I did is I ran a mobile gaming company, and I made this hugely popular and successful iPhone game. And that's why we sold the company and why everybody made money. What was it called? It was called Draw Something. It was a drawing guessing game. It was the 10-year anniversary. And I always like to say, when we started the company, the iPhone hadn't been invented. So it's like, oh, you started this company, made iPhone games. I was like, we didn't know what an iPhone was. It was like a Motorola flip phone. And so the world around you changes, and we're like, we don't know what that, we're just making web games, because that's what we're making. But you have to pay attention to everything that's moving around you as you kind of adapt your course.
Right. I think that's very important. And the thing that I kind of want to get to is this. Being in my position, I have a lot of people who have access to so much, whether financial access, knowledge access, knowing something is about to happen without nobody else knowing, that's access as well. And here you are in a position where obviously your idea could not be created without the help of others. Tell me about the team that you kind of put together, or your partners, investors, that help you create, now what we sit in now at OTE.
For sure. I mean, I'm just one piece of it. I have a co-founder, Zach, who is used to be half my age, and now as he gets older and I get older, it's a little less than half. But you don't start a company about sports for young people without a partner who's in that demographic, and not as only is he in that demographic, but he just complements me in a lot of different ways.
Right.
He's like a chess wizard. He's analytical. He can balance all of these things. Farzine, who you know as well, you put a contract in front of me, and all I can think about is what I want for lunch. It's like, I can't negotiate that thing, but I do have an idea.
Right.
And so you know what your weaknesses are. And Mark, who creates all of this around all the filming, and just a whole team of people with a variety of different interests and experiences. And for me, the way that you make something different is, like, if I wanted to make overtime and all I did was hire a bunch of people who worked at ESPN or some other things, all I would make is a worse version of ESPN. But if I hire a guy who never worked in sports over here, and I hired a guy who worked in finance over here, and I hired, a gal who worked over here, and somebody who was, all these different guys and gals, like, all around with different experiences, and they were like, I want to bring all the experience I have and I want to bring it to sports. That's how you make it different. And I told you that I liked music, and I always think about this story about Charles Mingus, who was like a famous jazz musician, a bass player. And he, like in the 60s and 70s, everybody wanted to make music that sounded different.
Right.
They wanted free jazz. They didn't want to, it wasn't dance music anymore. It was like an art music. And he decided one day, he's like, I'm going to take my piano player and I'll make him play drums, because the piano is a percussion instrument. I'm going to take my drummer and I'm going to make him play the piano, because he thinks about the piano in a different way. Right. He switched those people, and they didn't have any preconceptions about how to play their instrument. And the music was just different.
Yeah.
And I always think about that as I work with all these incredibly talented people who I work with at Overtime and Overtime Elite. Like, how do they bring in all their different skill sets? Male, female, young, old, white, black, rich, poor, all of these different people like that, so they can make something together that is not just, I took a bunch of people from here and asked them to do it again.
Yeah. To that point, I think I'm going to give you your flowers here, without you even knowing. Early times when I first came, this is like close to my 8th, 9th time here. Early on, I was in an elevator with a young lady, and she knew me, but she didn't know I was going to talk to her. You know what I'm saying? Typical. I'm here not to talk to her. I'm here for a meeting. And when we're going up the elevator, I asked her a simple question. I say, do you like it here? She said, without even blinking, I love it. And she's a double minority. She's, number one, a woman, right? And then she's a black woman. Yeah. And for her not to even blink, I love it. It's black people here, it's white people here, it's cultured people here, Chinese, it's every race is here, right? And I don't want to get, racist or, but it's different, many people from many different walks of life, and that's why it works. That's why you were able to create something that's outside the box, but so needed in a world that, the prototypical idea won't last it won't have longevity, But when you take a person, let's say maybe in finance, but has no idea how to shoot a basketball, but he knows when it looks cool or not. He knows who LeBron James is, Kevin Durant, things like that, who I know are investors in not one without the other, but but for her to say that, it meant a lot to me.
It means a lot to me. So
yeah, I mean, it's needed, and I'm a business owner. I'm a person who has a lot of access to many different people with many different ventures that I have. Cigar lounge, hat company, production company, 707. And I want to always create an environment that's safe, healthy, and empowering. right? It's what point is if me having control over something and I run it like a dictatorship, like, no, you're wrong. This is how I want to do it. But if somebody says to me, it's like, Cam, hey, bro, like, I see what you're doing with your Funky Fridays. Like, I think we should kind of put a little bit more, you know, polishing on it. And this is how you got, you know, this is the idea. And I was like, bro, if we can get Dan to talk about, you know, his story, that'll, number one, open up a whole different demographic than our viewers see. But also, we'll keep the look very polished and clean.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But to that point, as far as investors, right? What is the ideal investor or partner? Like, there's a difference. Partner, investor, you know, some people just give you money to say, okay, I just want a return on my investment, or ROI, in 2 years. You know, I don't care how you do it, hell or high water. I want you to turn 100,000 into 500,000, and that number can change. But what's the ideal, you know, golden standard for a partner in your eyes?
Yeah, I think when you have a partnership, your biggest fear is that when you work together, you're not going to like their ideas or they're not going to like yours, and it's going to be too tense to actually have that communication get to the next level. So we're sitting in the room in this building, and we're like talking about 7-on-7 rules, and then we start going, and we're just like this, and then you're gonna run, and your pops was like, no, we're not doing
we ain't
that.
doing that. That's
And
too,
we were
that's
like,
too
come
janky.
on, we literally just reinvented the game of football in
Yes.
this room, and your pops was like, no, and I was like, well, why? And he was like, blah 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 blah, and we're like, well, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, you get up on the whiteboard, and we're like, oh shit, we're gonna be in outer space before we're done this thing. And like,
Metaverse.
somebody's got to tell Cam we can't go to space; it's too expensive
right.
to play. And so, if you're able to say, like, it comes back to what I said before, like, the way to have good ideas is to have a lot of ideas. And if you have a partnership where you're just like, that ain't it, chief, but that's okay, and like, you know, and you're able to have that communication, you're gonna get to the good ideas. If you're too tight and you can't get there, you won't. I'd say on the investor side, I think the best investors, they're there for their belief in you, and they're just like, if this is what you think, like, then we back you. And I'd say investors always talk about adding value. How can I help you? How can I help your company? Well, the way that you can help me is, the best way is honestly relationships and door opening. If I say, oh, I started this league, but I don't know anybody at Nike. And this guy says, oh, I can get you to the top at Nike, and I'll walk you in, and I'll vouch for you. Well, that's something that I want. Or like, hey, do you guys know Drake? I got Drake. He loves basketball. I'll bring you in. Like, that is so much more valuable. Anybody can give you money, right, and anybody can say, go on, son, like, get to work. But like, when people make those connections for you, like, you only know who you know, and so that's the most valuable. And one other thing I wanted to say on your other point is, I spent, I don't know, 8-9 years working in nonprofit, right? And nonprofit is so interesting because there's no bottom line. You're not trying to make more money. You literally are like, I want to solve world hunger. I want to solve climate change. Like, you are there because everybody is focused on one thing that they want to do, and that's your return. Your return is, there are less homeless people in this city. Or your return is, like, we educated 10 more kids. And for me, I just learned so much from that when I came to the for-profit world, and it could be about bottom line and dollars and cents, I still brought that part. I'm like, but why are we here? We're here because, like, we believe we want to tell a different story.
Right.
We believe we want a different path for people. And if being in a nonprofit trains you how to identify that feeling and talk about it, then that person in the elevator says, they love it not because they get to go home early on Friday or their snacks. They love it because they understood there's a bigger purpose, because we all want a bigger purpose to what we spend our time doing every day.
So, I mean, I'll be remiss if we didn't talk about, you know, how we connected. And, you know, let's put a lot of questions to rest. OT7. I have my vision. I've shared with you.
Yeah.
I know the world, when they seen Cam Newton partners with Overtime to create this 7-on-7 platform to give exposure to high school children, like kids. But let's really educate the viewer and let them know from the horse's mouth, what do you feel is the vision for, OT7 for you?
I think that sevens are fun, exciting. It's less known. I mean, if you're in the football world and you're in your world, you know. If I tell a friend of mine who's a big NFL or college football fan, they kind of know or they don't know. I think that being able to go in there and tell those stories, and in a way, it almost has a lot to do with basketball, right? You can see their faces. You see all the emotion because they're not wearing helmets. They're going one-on-one in those battles. It's moving at a different way. And it takes all of the kind of energy and excitement of football, which is awesome, puts it a little different spin, and then we're able to capture all that in a different way and tell those stories. And I just think that football is so big and it's so popular, and outside of college football and the NFL, there's only one idea. It's like, let's start a football league at a different time of the year. It's like in the spring, and you're just like, after Super Bowl, hey, there's 8 new teams you never heard of, and it's time to watch them, and you're kind of like, I'm good. Who's playing? I don't really know any of them.
Is the NFL involved with it, or is this just like the G League to the NFL?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And so here you have like this whole different style. It's very overtime, and it's why you love it, because it's all next up kids. And like the story of overtime is like, hey, did you see that kid Zion Williamson? He was #1 in the NBA draft. Oh yeah, I've been watching him for 2 years on overtime. Like I was there. Like it's about taking that storytelling, because everybody wants to know who's next, and like bringing it under the lights in Vegas, and working with you and KO and your pops to like produce an incredible event. And then there's actually something that I didn't bring to it that you brought to it when you were telling me about how you win based on the experience, and how you win because the athletes come and they're just like, wow, I'm not used to being treated this way, and this is elevated. And I love that. And to me, we're looking to kind of reinvent something for the audience, for the athletes, for the parents, for everybody involved to tell bigger stories. And then it's just like, you remember like when you couldn't celebrate touchdowns in the NFL, and it's like you watch 7, you watch OT7, they're doing flips. They're like, it's so emotional. It's just you feel that energy that comes from it.
So for me, I've been involved in 7-on-7 for 13 years, right? And I think this is my opportunity where I can have a subtle flex. Deshaun Watson was my first quarterback. All right, on when we started this all-star league, I had Justin Fields, I had Sam Howell, Malik Willis. Those are the quarterbacks that you may know. But ironically enough, Malik didn't even play quarterback. He played quarterback for us, but we had quarterbacks, so many quarterbacks that year that he was like, bro, I just want to play, and he was so superior as an athlete. Another story for a different time. But we've had so many different players. Obviously, here of recent, Travis Hunter, E.J. Williams, George Pickens, Jaden Hazelwood. And I knew my life was changing. So even when you were saying starting a nonprofit, the Cam Newton Foundation was the originator for the 7-on-7 plan. But a couple years ago, we went and took it to a for-profit entity. And obviously having partnerships like yourself is a for-profit type of idea, but not losing the vision that we want to put the experience for the athlete first. Because once you do that, you have a consumer for life, right? Not just we got Cam Newton coming in and, we just want to cater to him.
That's just the presentation. You're talking about the belief.
The belief, right, right, there you go. But, over the years, man, we've had so many different real relationships that, I mean, if I'm forgetting anybody, man, everybody knows C1N, 7-on-17, and I say it with so much validity and validation that we are the best 7-on-7 organization in the world. The world, Craig. Yes, the world, because it's more than football for us. We've did so much for so many different homes that I don't even want, half of what I've done back. I don't need it. You know, I'm in a position, and when I talk to parents, when I talk to coaches, and even when I talk to players, the main thing that they want to know is how involved is Cam, right? And, you know, everybody who knows our team know there's not an event that goes on, there's not a practice that goes on that Cam is not in the forefront. And it's not for myself to be relevant. It's more or less for them to realize, like, if I commit to this sport and if I believe in myself, I can not only change my life, but I can change everybody who I care about lives too. And that's what, I mean, let's be honest. It wouldn't be no Iconic Saga if it wasn't for football. It wouldn't be no Mashika hats if it wasn't for football. It wouldn't be no partnership with Overtime if it wasn't for football. So I want to be able to say, I used the game of football. I didn't let the game of football use me. And with that being said, I think my plan for OT7 is to be able to have a very broad entity with using the platform of football and looking at the competition. Those names will still remain anonymous and irrelevant, but at the same time, me being a part of and seeing it from the coach's lens, right? And I'm still playing right now and have played over those years, and I'm saying, bro, like, how could you do something and not have this? You know, man, somebody tweaked, you know, their hamstring or they have an injury and nobody's here to aid his situation. Like, that's not a safe, you know, environment. So now when we have our meetings, it's refreshing when, like, you know, you have everybody's attention and they're listening. It's not where I say they're hearing you, not just listening. They, you know, it's just like a sound that you can listen to, but hearing you and taking in and saying, okay, well, damn, like, how do you do this when, you know, 90-degree, 100-degree weather and you not have no Gatorade, no Powerade, no body armor, no H2O, whatever. And it's just like, yeah, people do it. And it's a risk that they're willing to take, but that will not be the case for us. We really, and I say this, you know, I really want to be able to put something on that it caters not only to the athlete, as in the player, but it caters to the family. It caters to the coaches. It caters to, you know, everybody involved in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. And I guarantee you'll watch this industry grow because people have seen what 7-on-7 is for years. Everybody that's in the NFL now, in some way, shape, form, if you're a skill position, you've played 7-on-7 in this league outside of like Tom Brady, because it probably wasn't creative, but that was a joke. But I think it's so important that these kids get exposure. And, you know, one of the associates with Overtime, Hunter, was mentioning, like, we just want to have exclusive athletes. We just want to have the top of the top and the best of the best. And I'm like, bro, one thing about football that's different than basketball, I'm a 5-star and you're a no-star. And we're going to compete with the best of the best. And you will not be able to tell who's who. If you take name tags off of who those people are, you'll be like, damn, like, I thought this team, where's this team from? This team from, you know, a small town in Texas, and they're playing with, you know, C1N, and it's a nail biter. You know what I'm saying? It's a barn burner. But, you know, for me, getting deals done like this and having people who see the vision is something that I kind of, you know, pat myself on the back, because everybody doesn't do it. I'm pretty sure a lot of people, just because, you know, my phone and people just reaching out was like, bro, how in the hell, how long y'all been working on this, bro? I want in, you know, let me get in on it. I'm like, nah, dog, it's because my impact and my heart never changed with it. Even still to this day, you know, I have the kids' best interests at heart, and I always question the kids who go play for other people. And I'm like, well, how are they able to get you prepared for the next level? You want to go to the next level, right? The Alabamas, the Jackson States, the Savannah States, the Auburns, the Georgias, the Georgia States, the Morehouses, but they never played there. You know what I'm saying? And I believe in, if you study the field enough, you can become an expert. But there's nothing like real experiences, and I share that with them. And a lot of times this is my way to give back, you know. And I briefed you and told you prior to while we're off camera, talking like I'm looking forward to this weekend because we get to go to Knoxville, and we're trying to set up college visits for these kids who, we always said in Atlanta, a lot of these kids never been outside of 285, and that's a real thing. You know what I'm saying? A lot of kids never seen a palm tree. A lot of kids never been in the airport. A lot of kids never, you know, had other restaurant chains where it's just like, bruh, In-N-Out, what's In-N-Out? What's Raising Cane's? I ain't never, oh, it's like Zaxby's? Oh, it's like Chick-fil-A? No, I ain't nothing like Chick-fil-A, bro. Like having and hearing these conversations for 6-hour bus rides, and, you know, the thing that I love most is doing room check. You know, these kids are you know, just played the time of their life, like all day. And it's our job as adults to cater to their needs and also keep them on the straight and narrow. But when we're doing room check with our teams, you see the humanistic side of these kids, where it's just like they're on TikTok, and then I always see somebody like they got their phone kind of recording me like, you know, my coach Cam, what your coach is, you know what I'm saying? And this man here, you know, he could be anywhere in the world, but he here with us, man, checking in and making sure that we ain't doing anything stupid. And the kids who get it, they get it, right? And there still are kids that's just like, oh man, I can still do this. But I'm like, bro, the sooner that you realize that you're not normal, right? The Zion Williamsons, the Lonzo Balls, the Travis Hunters, the, you know, the young up and coming kid who, you know, try to look cool, and it's a mistake, and more times than not is made off of innocence. Man, I'm just smoking Cam because I seen my favorite rapper Future, they smoke. But bruh, he get paid to smoke. That's his image. Your image isn't to smoke. You know what I'm saying? If I sit up here and smoke, and now it's a cool thing thanks to Joe Burrow, haha, another joke. You know, smoking cigars, I've been smoking cigars, right? But I got a cigar lounge. I get paid to smoke, right? You over here smoking marijuana, which is illegal in the state of Georgia. Why would you even want to do that, right? And I always ask them, I say, listen, there's nothing that I won't do to appease to the betterment of myself, and I know my heart enough to know if I'm better, everything that I love is better. So if somebody told me, Cam, you can't talk to your dad for this amount of time, but in that time, you're going to get $100 million. Would you do it?
No.
Bullshit.
200 maybe.
200, man, listen, and
No,
they
I'm
giving
just
it.
kidding.
They giving
I mean,
it.
you don't get that time back though.
You don't, but you don't get that money back either.
What am I gonna do with that money?
A lot. More than what you wouldn't do. In this perspective, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is, it's like,
If it was like one day, yeah. If it was like 10 years,
right.
and then like the person who brought you into this world,
Yeah.
and then you just cut them out. just
It's
for
a
money.
very bold thing, and the question is, and I will respectfully say, if somebody said, Cam, I'll give you $100 million, but you have to be remote, you can't talk to nobody in your family.
Your kids.
I-
You gotta
I-
look. You can't just look up. You gotta look down.
Yeah, I would.
You would.
I'll take the money.
10 years you can't talk to your kids.
I'll take the money.
Okay.
And this is what I'll do. Before I go into it, I'll tell them what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's not for me, it's for you. Because everything that I do is for my family, right? And I say to it to a degree where it's like, man, I'm making a decision that I'm sacrificing time to make your life easier.
Yeah.
And I seen a quote here recently that said, somebody's sitting in shade now because somebody stood in the sun to plant that tree.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I think it's fair. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer.
Of course not.
I think it's what is the value of money versus, like, would you do it when your kid was like 2 to 12, when they went from like crawling and walking, and you were just like, and then you couldn't even see it on social media. You just disappeared, and then you came back, and they were like, yo, my guy, how's it going?
Yeah, man.
And you were like, whoa, what happened?
Who are you? But I'm like,
Yeah.
man, listen, I know we got a lot to catch up on. Man,
Yeah.
I got a private jet, and we about to travel the world. Let's do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'll be the first person to tell you, money doesn't cure everything. And I don't want people to see that and be like, man, Cam, I do anything for money, because I wouldn't. if it has purpose for it,
Yeah.
I'm willing to do it. People do it all the time. I'm in this situation right now where it's like, Cam, are you willing to go play here? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. It's man, chosen it as a father. I literally, it's so many people that don't know me for that, but you don't know until you know, or if you don't know, you don't know. Last week, I spent 5 hours in the blazing sun at a track meet, right, with my son. I had, the kids there, and I'm like, bro, I'm literally like the soccer mom. I'm in the bleachers, like subtle as could be, putting the shades on, putting the hat
That's your
down.
specialty, being subtle, right?
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, of course, especially especially with the dressing and attire. But I'm over there and I'm looking at myself and I'm like, bro, like I'm a dad. And my kids is going around and everybody, like I said, if you know, you know. It brings me so much joy to be able to cut that dead voice. Hey, sit down. Hey, put your hip, come here. That tone right there, it took years to master. It's still trying to, you need to.
I sat down.
But just for that, alone, I do what I do for my kids.
Yeah.
And if I don't have my kids around, bruh, and I don't have people who are really close and dear to me around, then I'm by myself. Like, and I say that wholeheartedly. So when you have business ventures like this, when you have, whether it's professional decisions that you have to make, like you look at it through that lens, I can say people make that decision for the Army every single day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And, what the return is, who knows?
Yeah.
But my last question, as we wrap this up, I asked you this before, and I think it's cool to have this type of, back and forth on camera. What's more important, championships or impact? Now, to explain the question again, championships is, let's take an individual like Robert Ory, right? Bruce Bowen.
Yeah.
Somebody that was behind the scenes that could say, bro, I'm a 6-time champion. I'm a 4- or 5-time champion. This is my second championship, but nobody knew you. Or you take a guy like Allen Iverson. Take a guy like Michael Vick. You take a guy like, did Tripper Jones win it?
That I don't know.
But I was trying to use the baseball analogy, but.
That's not my sport.
Right.
So.
But somebody who literally impacted the game at a high level and you know them, rather than a person that has championships, what you say?
I would say impact, no doubt. I mean, first of all, championship is someone else's rules. They're the ones who decided that you're champion. You could say the same thing, which is more important, impact or MVP. Well, you're not in charge of MVP. That's other people's rules. They're deciding who that is, and they're deciding that the championship mattered. I mean, which mattered more, the Duke UNC game for the history of that, or the national? That almost sometimes you get a playoff game in the NFL, and you're like, that was kind of the Super Bowl right there. And I think that championship is great. It's also great for you. Come to my house, check out my ring.
Yeah.
But like impact. Like when young players come and you ask them who their favorite player is and they all say like AI or whatever, you just realize like, wow, you're influencing them, then they're influencing other people. Right. So to me, it's kind of like, do I want to start a company and do I want to take it all the way and go public on the stock market and make billions and everything else like that? Or do I want to start a company where somebody comes up to me in the street and they see my hoodie and they're like, Overtime, I love what you guys are doing. Yeah. Like, I love Overtime. They go, shout out to Overtime. Yeah. And I'm like, I'll take that all day, every day over just looking at the stock price or anything else like that.
It's funny, to that point, I remember we were having our conversation, just me and you was like, man, kind of to the point where you kind of knew like your life was changing. You was walking your dog or something, and you seen somebody playing your game, and it was like creepy experience for them. It's just like, hold up.
I came up behind. I was with my son, and I saw them, and they were laughing on the bench, and I was like, I think they're playing that game that I made. And I was like, come on, Miles, let's go see. And he's like, no, you can go. I'll hold the dogs. That's kind of creepy. And I go behind. I was like, yo, I made that game. And they were like, okay. But I was like, that's what you want to make something that other people get so much joy out of, and they never even have to know you.
Right.
And like, to me, that's, I'll take that over MVP, championship, public company, any of that all day long.
Damn, Daniel. Jonathan Porter, my man, my guy, my partner. Appreciate you for giving me the most expensive thing in the world, and that's your time. It was nice meeting your wife, lovely wife. It was nice chatting with you. Many more to come.
Thank you for having me, Cam.
And I pride myself on being able to say, man, I want to be the person when you look back 5 to 10 years that's what you call a partner. You know what I'm saying?
Let's go.
And appreciate that. So, as we always end things on Funky Friday, you know what I'm saying, the right way, where we at? Let's look at, we're going to hit all of them, right? So we're going to look at this one, then we're going to go to that one, and then we're going to finish on that one. You good?
Left, right, center.
Here we go. You ready? One finger, one pinky, one thumb, one love. Appreciate you.